Now it's time for a look at the day's top business news. For that, I'm joined here in the studio by France 24's Brian Quinn. He's starting in the US, where battles over the budget is once again taking the government really to the brink, in fact, isn't it, Brian, of shutdown?
It is indeed, Stuart, and many analysts saying that shutdown is looking increasingly likely. October 1st is the deadline for the U.S. Congress to pass legislation to fund the government. Far-right Republicans in the House of Representatives, though, are demanding deep spending cuts that are almost certain to be rejected by the Democratic-controlled Senate. Now, just months ago, President Joe Biden and House Speaker Kevin McCarthy struck a deal to avoid a catastrophic default on U.S. debt. McCarthy now seeking a 45-day stopgap funding bill, but hardliners in his party aren't budging. A shutdown would mean delayed paychecks for some 4 million government workers, including military personnel. Here's Biden on Sunday.
Just a few months ago, after long negotiations between myself and the new speaker, we agreed to spending levels the government will fund essential domestic and national security priorities, while still cutting the deficit by $1 trillion over the next decade. Now, a small group of extreme Republicans don't want to live up to the deal. So now everyone in America could be forced to pay the price.
Well, next, French President Emmanuel Macron is calling on the country's top firms to lower their prices as consumers face declining purchasing power amid persistent high inflation. Macron says he wants the country's agro-industrial groups to moderate their profit margins, saying many have kept prices unnecessarily high, even as their production costs have gone down following shocks from the COVID pandemic and the war in Ukraine. Well, with crude oil back over $90 per barrel, high fuel costs are hitting French consumers and businesses. The president says he'll be asking the country's energy industry to sell fuel at cost.
One thing we can do is to tackle excessive profit margins on refining. We've raised the possibility of selling fuel at a loss. We're not there yet, but it's on the table. The Prime Minister will talk to players in the sector this week and ask them to sell at cost.
Let's get a check-in on the day's trading action. Asian index is mixed on Monday as investors wait for the latest inflation data from around the region. The Nikkei in Tokyo up nearly a full % as the yen falls to a 10-month low against the dollar. That's raising the possibility of Japanese government intervention on currency markets. Chinese indexes, though, in the red. Shares in struggling property developer Evergrande are down 25% in Hong Kong as the company announced it will be unable to issue new debt under a restructuring plan. Finally, for business, as a tech trade war between China and the West heats up, Europe is seeking to grow its microchip production capacity, and fast. Germany is no exception. Europe's top economy is an industrial powerhouse, but its heavy manufacturing sector has hit a slump. The government and business leaders turning to semiconductor production as a strategy to kickstart growth. France 24's Anne Maillet and Nick Spicer report from what the Germans are calling Silicon Saxony.
It's called Silicon Saxony. In Dresden, it's not cars, but microchips that are made in Germany. Each of these silicon wafers holds scores of chips. The quality control is painstaking.
Every small square on this wafer is a microchip that will be integrated into a product, like a phone or a television.
The company is one of Europe's biggest microchip manufacturers. The sector is growing as electronic components are now a matter of strategic rivalry.
In recent years, we witnessed how geopolitics and industrial policy can change the game's rules. It's time for Europe to tackle this.
Around Dresden, 70,000 people work in 2,400 companies engaged in research and production set to grow massively. The German company Bosch set up shop in 2021, and the Taiwanese giant TSMC just announced plans to start building its first European plant. It's all both an opportunity and a challenge for small businesses in the ecosystem here, such as this startup developing chips for artificial intelligence.
We plan to grow our workforce to 100 people in the coming years. But the shortage of qualified labor is a significant hurdle for us, not just in terms of recruitment, but also the level of training, which needs to improve contrary to the current trend.
Germany hopes to buck those trends and become Europe's leader in microelectronics. The government has pledged 20 billion euros in subsidies for the sector.
The stark reality is that funds are being invested around the globe to back microelectronic production. It's a real subsidy race. If we want to keep this sector in Germany, we don't have much choice but to go along with it.
What's also at stake is the future of German heavy industry, whose recent slowdown is due, in part, to a semiconductor shortage.
Everybody trying to ramp up their microchip production, Stuart. The US, Europe, Taiwan, China, everybody.
It's going worldwide is the thing,
Indeed.
isn't it? Thanks, Brian. Brian Quinn with the business for you on France 24.